All right, everybody, welcome back to Turn Two with Scott and Troy. We have a very special guest, Mr. Corey Bird, one of the few professional baseball players from West Virginia. We were talking about it before the show, how many, yeah, such a tight-knit group and such a small baseball community there in West Virginia that continues to grow. But we're so excited to have you on the show. A little bit about Corey. He actually was a longtime Jumbo Shrimp as well as a Miami Marlin. We're very excited to have him here on the show to kind of talk about what his life is like during baseball season and then now in retirement. Let's see, Corey, how many years are you out of retirement? Is it three, four?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Scott and Troy. Yes, so I stopped playing when the year 2021. Then was it 21 or 22 is when I retired from the Marlins. Then I came out of retirement, and then whenever I came out of retirement, I got released, and then I ended up playing independent ball for the Charleston Dirty Birds. And so my career ended in 2022. Yeah, so it's been a couple years.
Well, and Corey, from what I remember about you, you were a hit first player and a fantastic defensive player as well. Um, Now a little bit about you. You're starting to give lessons to kids. Is that right?
That's right. So it's kind of a long story. So whenever I had finished my career with the Dirty Birds, I finished my degree at Marshall, got my sports management degree, and finished it up, and then I actually moved to Florida, and then I came back up to West Virginia. And whenever I came back up, some guy he built a facility, and he wanted someone to manage it. And I had kind of gotten back into doing hitting lessons, and this guy he had contacted me, and so I've been doing managing a facility. So doing lessons, we have birthday parties here. There's other people who work here. We have an infield guy. We have someone who does pitching. He used to be the former Marshall softball coach. So it's a cool setup.
How many, let's say, how many levels are you guys working at this facility? Because a little bit about myself is I actually work at, if you know anything about the state of Washington, the city
Yeah,
of Seattle,
sure.
there's about one indoor hitting baseball facility for every square mile.
Yeah,
And so we
right,
have one on just about every street corner.
for sure.
I've worked at two or three different ones. So for me, I've worked at from kids at 8 years old to 18, 19 college guys. What kind of different levels do you guys have at your facility? And what's the name of it?
Yeah, so it's called the Yard Sports Facility, and we're in Ona, West Virginia, right off of Route 60, in the mountains. No, we're not in the mountains, but yeah. So when some people think of a hitting facility, they're going to think of you may have former pro guys going there, college guys who are spending the off season there. The oldest kid that I've worked with would be a high school kid, but the majority of my kids would probably be middle school and elementary school. So, for instance, I had a kid who was in the third grade. I had him every single week for an hour, once a week. And so West Virginia is kind of one of those areas that's not quite tapped into to maximize kind of the full potential of the baseball and softball players. I do work with baseball and softball, and I teach the same swing. But if you go to Ohio, which is the state that borders us, you're going to have kind of like Washington. You're going to have probably more, you can say, elite facilities where former players or current players are training. That's not like that here. We don't have any former pro guys that are or current that are coming here. It's more elementary, middle school, some high school.
I think so. First off, I want to say Corey's one of my favorite guys we've had here in Jacksonville. One of the few players who have played here as a double A player and a triple A player.
That's right.
Brian Miller would be another guy who
Yeah.
is one of my favorites as well. But I think you're discounting the state of West Virginia because the Jumbo Shrimp manager in
Yeah.
2025 is David Carpenter. We were talking before this. Um, there's actually a really decent pipeline of guys from West Virginia, either to college football, football in general, or obviously like yourself and David, baseball guys. So like, have you come across David Carpenter? Did you know of him growing up? Because I think his time playing in the major leagues, and he played with 6 or 7 teams, was a little bit when you were either at Marshall or maybe fresh into the minor leagues.
Sure. Yeah. So that's a really good point, Scott. it's kind of interesting. David Carpenter would be kind of he would be a big name guy in this state, and he is. He deserves it. He was a major leaguer. He's worthy of the praise, so to speak. I've never met David. I think I heard that he was actually a position player in high school, and then um, when he got to college at West Virginia, he turned into a pitcher. I've never met David. I know he had a great career, but yeah, he's definitely one of you know, there's kind of a handful. I think John Kruk was from West Virginia,
Mm.
maybe George Brett. We have Randy Moss. You have Jerry West. You have Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban. So you have kind of like it's kind of odd in one sense. But yeah, we do have a good pipeline of pro athletes and college coaches for sure.
And kind of on that note, like West Virginia, I think people think of it, man, it's a beautiful place. Like I've gone a few times, but you could speak to this. One of the great rivalries in college sports is where your alma mater, Marshall, and David Carpenter's alma mater, West Virginia. So what was that rivalry like for you growing up? Like, did you follow it? Were you a fan of a specific team? And then what was it like to kind of be a part of that when you were with the Thundering Herd?
Yeah, admittedly, growing up, I wasn't a huge, diehard sports fan. There are some diehard Mountaineer fans here. Same with Marshall. West Virginia is obviously going to be, more of a known school, Big 12, bigger athletics. Um, but fortunately for me, whenever I got to Marshall, we actually did get to play West Virginia whenever I was in college. I think before that we didn't play in baseball, and they still don't play each other in football, which to me is really sad. I don't know how or what the reason is for that, but I don't know. You have West Virginia and Marshall. That would draw a lot of money just from TV and stuff, and who doesn't want to see that in the state? But yeah, it's cool, being able to be at Marshall and play against West Virginia. We actually did not have a field whenever I was at Marshall. We did not have a home field. So our games were actually at YMCA fields or at a professional park in Charleston. Um, and so, but having the opportunity to go to West Virginia's new ballpark and to play there, it was really cool.
In professional baseball, did you ever play against or for the West Virginia Black Bears?
Yes. So whenever I was I in low A or high A? I was in high. Was it high? One season I was playing and I actually got hurt, and I had to rehab, and then I ended up playing for the Black Bears or against the Black Bears with the Batavia Mud Dogs for a couple of games.
That's funny. You're one of the last Batavia Muck Dogs then. So I was in the very last season of
Nice.
Batavia when they were still a professional team, and that was one of my favorite spots to go.
Yeah.
Was West Virginia Black Bears, just because of the downtown life. We were there when school was just coming in, and so they had drink deals at the bars. They had all these food options. They had all this different stuff. And for a guy that was just coming out of college, it felt like a normal atmosphere, not the wonderful Batavia, New York.
Yeah, I think anything is going to be better than Batavia. I can still smell the horse manure from the track or whatever. Yeah,
From the racetrack over
from
there.
the racetrack, sure.
They
Yeah,
did
but
have a good sub shop. They did have a good New York
they
sandwich sub
did.
shop.
You're right. That's
There we
true.
go. That was about
Very true.
and a
Did
good casino. That was about it.
did you ride a bike to the field?
No, so what we did,
Okay.
we had a pitcher, MD Johnson, if he's listening,
Yeah.
he's phenomenal, but he had a truck. And so he would have three guys in the back of his truck, one guy in the front passenger seat, and then he'd have probably like five or six, seven guys in the truck bed, and we would just ride to the field. And so it was like 10 guys in a truck, and we would just ride to the field.
Good for you, man. So whenever I was in Batavia, it was me and another outfielder, and we would bike to the field. And the house that we were in, there was no heat, if or no AC. If you want to, cool off, you just open the windows.
Yeah.
But it was definitely that was a tough part of my career
I think that's a tough part of a lot of people's career.
for sure.
The lower levels are treated much better now, but
Yeah,
beforehand, not so much.
yeah, yeah,
But hey, so speaking of that, do you remember? So this is an interesting fact
yeah.
for people that don't know, but
Mhm.
pre-CBA, pre-unionization of the minor leagues and the major leagues, do you remember what your very first 2-week paycheck was? when you first got into pro ball?
I think it's one of those things where I knew that it wasn't, I know that it wasn't substantial. Therefore, I did not, it wasn't even like a point of conflict with me. Like it just is what it is. You kind of just expect that.
Okay.
You remember yours, Troy?
I do know exactly what mine was. My first for 2 weeks of work was $258.
Wow.
There
And
you
I
go.
was thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm a college kid. I haven't got my bonus yet.
Yeah,
I have no money. How am I going to eat this week?
yeah, yeah.
But I'm playing baseball and I'm in Batavia, New York.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. My first job, I'm pretty sure I was at like 250 a month or something like that. And then housing was paid for. And the Sheets was a big partner of the team I was working for. So I remember like getting a bunch of Sheets gift cards and going there for lunch
Yep.
like every day. You figure it out. You figure it out.
The
yeah,
grinder part of baseball, which I don't think people um, kind of have anymore. I don't think that's a
yeah,
mentality that people
yeah.
have in minor league baseball anymore.
Sure.
They
Yeah,
don't have those experiences.
yeah, yeah.
Corey, I guess like one of the interesting things, your career, and you touched on this a little bit ago.
Mhm.
You in 2021, I just think is such an interesting year. And then you said you had retired and you came back. And like what was that? Like what was going on in your head? Like can you go back to that decision? Because that's hard. And do you miss baseball at all now? Like a few years later, obviously you're still in the game, but not necessarily in professional baseball.
Yeah, for sure. I think when it comes to just decision making in general, um, I was in one sense, I was slow to make the decision to retire from baseball. But I think maybe I should have thought through it a little bit differently, a little bit, yeah, a little bit differently. And then you retire, and then actually, it's interesting. This is good for Troy to know. But if you retire, and I just kind of unofficially retire, I don't sign the retirement form, then I can come back and play according to my knowledge. But I signed an official retirement document. And in that document, I didn't know this at the time, but it actually says that you have to, if you retire and come out of retirement, you have to wait 60 playing days
Hmm.
to be able to return. Um, and so I did not know that. So whenever I called tomorrow and said, "Hey, like I made a mistake. I went back in the game." Um, that was an issue. And so I was training, preparing my body to come back. But I had to wait for the season to start and for the amount of games to be played for me to be reinstated, and I got released after that, and for good reason. I mean, I hadn't played in 60 days. I'm not a top prospect. You have other guys who are better than me and have more money. Why wouldn't they have the opportunity?
I
That's
think
go ahead.
I just think you're being humble because you were a very good player. You could look up your numbers on Baseball Reference. Like you. I remember going to the 2021 season. Like, Corey Bird's a solid player. We had him last year, and then you lit the world on fire the first half of the year. And I just think this is one of the worst things I've had to deal with in baseball
Sure.
in general. And I'll be just upfront about this.
Yeah,
Was you get the call up, and I remember talking about this on the radio afterwards about you and Parker Bug.
yeah,
And
yeah,
both of you guys got that call up, and the Marlins, did not have a good team that year. And just, I kind of understand it more from a pitching perspective because depending on game situation, but it just crushed me. You were there for several days. You're not a pitcher, you're an outfielder. To not get you in a major league game at some point. And I know you're being humble by saying, well, there are other guys who are better. You earned that opportunity. I think that first half of the year, you hit like 320 or something along those lines. And that just really killed me because you
yeah,
see a good person like yourself who gets that call. And I remember it being a huge deal in West Virginia as the media person. We're getting all these requests from TV
yeah.
stations in your hometown. I'm sure that's difficult even to relive a few years later, but what do you remember about that time? I'm sure it was elation and probably a little bit of disappointment at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Scott. Yeah, that was probably the best that I've ever played in my life. Before getting the call up to the big leagues. I'm batting fourth on a AAA in a lineup, which that's a dream to me. I worked hard to be able to have that opportunity to to perform well at the AAA level, which to me, being from West Virginia, is a really big deal. And then having the opportunity to get to the major leagues, yeah, it was definitely tough, And the way that I look at it, um, I really see baseball as a sport that is to be enjoyed. I get the business part of it. I understand. I think we ended up signing De La Cruz from the Astros. He was a AAA stud. And so he ended up, coming uh, and uh, and I think taking my spot. We called up Brian Miller. Two great athletes, two great players. It was tough, but I it's one of those things where it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for the opportunity that I was given to be able to get to the major leagues and to be in a dugout, at Camden Yards against the Orioles, and to have Don Mattingly, the historical Don Mattingly, as my manager. And to be transparent, Scott, even after I got DFA'd, I was making more money, and I'm thankful for that as well. I wasn't on kind of what Troy had mentioned. I was making more money at that time and able to earn the wage that I was deserving. Back in AAA, and so yeah, it was tough, but there was also blessings that I am very thankful for as well.
For the good parts of that, like what was that call like when you go into presumably Al Patrique's was the manager, right, at the
That's
time?
right. Yeah,
So what do you remember about like about that call and who did you tell first? Can you go through all
sure.
that of like at
Yeah.
least getting that call, the positive stuff of that call up?
Yeah, I was actually in the shower, and Danny Black came in there and told me to go talk to the skipper. And so I went to Al, and his question was, "Do you like money?" And I mean, who doesn't like money? And so, it's actually funny. I actually didn't get called up to the big leagues right then and there. I was on the taxi squad, and so when you go to the taxi squad, I don't know if that's still a thing or not.
Yes.
It is okay. Yep. It's so when I was on the taxi squad, it was just kind of, I don't know what's going to happen. I actually flew with Preston. What's his last name? Ah, he was
Jay,
a
right? Go
huh?
Jay, something like that.
Correct. Yep. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. I didn't want to butcher it.
Oh, man.
Yep.
Hmm.
And so we actually flew, and I am so thankful for that guy because he was basically just, and once in shepherding me through. This is your first call up, I mean, he's an older guy. He's like 35 in AAA with a 25-year-old doesn't know anything. Um, and so yeah, you get to the you're on the taxi squad. So I really didn't get called up till it was batting practice when I actually got the official call up, signed the contract. But yeah, I got to call my parents, and that was just kind of what you mentioned to off the shoot, Scott. Whenever you get called up, you have the opportunity, even if you're going from even from high school to college or from low A to high A. That's I had a parent text me yesterday. His son got his first varsity hit. Like that's a huge deal. Like wow. And so just be able to celebrate that. Um, it's incredible. My mom got to come down with my little cousin. My head coach was here from Marshall. And yeah, it didn't work out, but we can still celebrate that, all the labor that they helped me put in, that they put in themselves, it came to fruition. And we can celebrate that.
Absolutely. You said something interesting to me. We were texting a little bit, and like you mentioned your coaching that you get to do and stay in baseball that way. But you also said that once you retired, you went back to Marshall and you got your degree.
Sure.
And you're still going back to school now. So, like, where do you see, maybe you don't know yet, and that's okay. Like, where do you see things going now that you're kind of taking one step away from professional baseball, but you're still in the game? Like, I'm
Yeah.
always really curious about how guys see things once they're done playing.
It's a really good question. I think it's one of those things where people try to get away from a certain field, and no matter how much they get away from it, they always get brought back. And that's kind of been my experience. I love the kids I work with. I love the parents. They are great. Um, this job is difficult. I work evenings. I don't have health insurance. I do, but it's from a different.
Hmm.
I'm not a W-2. I'm a 1099. So there's definitely pros. I was a major leaguer. I can dispense the knowledge that I have to these kids. Um, and so me being retired, it is. You're starting life all over. I am a babe in the real world. You're trying to figure out what am I even good at? What am I not good at? I had two sales jobs before this, and I was awful. I wouldn't buy for my own self. I was selling HR to federal contractors, Aflac to which is supplemental insurance. I was so out of my league. I am not a sales guy. Troy seems more like a sales guy than I would be, but sales was not my cup of tea. And so it's almost like I'm 29 years old. I don't know what I want to do. I'm in school right now. That's true, but once again, I don't know if I'll keep going the route that I'm in with school. So trying to figure out what am I good at? Am I just good at baseball, or what are the skills and abilities do I have? I did this from age 5 to age 20, 25, 26, and I reached the top, and now I'm at the bare bottom. What do I do with my life? I'm single, which is good because now I don't have to figure it out with a wife right here trying to provide. Um, but it's definitely, retiring and not having uh, a backup plan, so to speak. I had no backup plan. Like I went to college and my major was baseball. That's what it was.
Hmm.
That's just, I graduated with a sports management degree because it was easy. I'm just being honest. And so trying to figure out, what do I do? I don't know. But it's like I said earlier, I'm a babe right now in the real world, and this guy who has a lot of money, he built a facility, and it's great. We can help kids here, and I'm able to just use the talents that I've been given to give back to the community, and we'll see what the day by day, kind of step by step, and see what the future holds with vocation and what kind of work that uh, you know I ended up doing.
That is so interesting that you made the comment about me being a good salesman
For sure.
because the amount of off-season jobs that I've
Yep.
had, I
Yep.
strived in my sales jobs. I sold,
That's so funny.
I
Yep.
worked for Closets by Design. If you don't know Closets
Yep.
by Design, you'll know California Closets. And
Yep.
I would go into people's homes and I'd sell them. I would design them and sell them closets, and people would buy from me just 'cause I don't know if I was very good at what I did, but I thought I was.
You were good.
I was salesman of the month the first 2 months that I worked at that place, so I must have been doing something right. But it's so interesting to hear you talk about that you were a baseball first kind of person because in my mind, and maybe it was the way that I was raised with my parents were teachers, they're phenomenal human
Yep.
beings. But I personally did not think professional baseball was an option for me
Mhm.
until probably halfway through my junior year of college,
Sure.
right before I got drafted, probably 2 months before. So it's interesting to hear people that think, and maybe for the kids that are listening right now, like how hard it really is to play professional baseball and
Sure.
having those ideas of backups. Like for me, I had internships lined up, I had jobs lined up right after college. I
Wow.
didn't think I was going to go even play baseball. It happened that, I had a really good junior year. I got a lot of attention. Ended up getting drafted, but realistically, and even to this point in my life, like I'm already talking to the guys in Jacksonville for a medical sales job. Like, if I need a backup just in case, because I like to always look at the bigger picture, and it's so admirable of you because I wish I had what you had in the faith of baseball. Because for me, I feel like, and even being with one team for my whole career, I do understand that there's so many different opportunities. But being fully bought into baseball is such a hard thing to do. And it's so admirable that you were able to do that during your career and even giving back to the community after. I mean, that's such a huge impact that, you may not even know. I just want to say, like, just, it's so cool to hear from somebody that was so bought into baseball, where it's such a different view for me as I'm always looking at the next step. And I'm not going to say I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out, but I definitely have a shadow lingering over me that I can think about other things while I'm focusing on what I need to do.
No, I appreciate that, Troy. That's very kind of you. I will say, in high school and college, I put all my eggs in the baseball basket. It was baseball or nothing. Um, and I'm talking diet. What do I do after practice? What I do before practice, during practice, off days, um, how much am I going to hit? How much am I going to run? My weightlifting, why do I have that much body fat? Uh, I took, it was my life. I took a great deal of, uh, um, of time with baseball for myself. I mean, you're on YouTube. You're watching guys who you want to be like. You're watching Billy Burns. Who's ever heard of Billy Burns? He's a little switch hitting outfielder from the Athletics.
Mm.
And so yeah, you give all this time to one thing, and you know, on the other side of the equation, what if I would have done that and 2 days before the draft, I get hurt and I have a career-ending injury, or I just have I tear my ACL. Now I don't get drafted. I go back my senior year and I hit 208 with one double. Now I have no backup plan. So we definitely it's kind of funny because what you said about me. Well, I think about the same with you, Troy. Whenever it comes to you, you're in college. You actually have a real backup plan. You know that baseball is not going to last forever. You know that you have to put food on the table for your future family. You see reality, the big picture, what you still are seeing, as you had just mentioned, and so I love that about you, and that's even inspirational for me just to see your take on professional baseball and how that wasn't something that you lived and died by, but you had a real mindset. You had a more of a real mindset that I had. You had internships lined up. I didn't even know what an internship was when I was in college. I'm going to go play baseball. That's what I'm going to do. And so, yeah, I think that's really cool. Just kind of seeing both sides of the equation with someone like me who, it's baseball or nothing. And you had and you still do have such a good head on your shoulders with, this is going to be over one day. What do I do? What am I going to do if I'm in Jacksonville and I get released? And that's exactly right, Troy. For the kids out there, baseball, if you want to pursue baseball to go to the major leagues, then go for it with all your might. Let's go for it. But be realistic. You could have an injury. There is someone who is better than you. Unless you are Otani, someone is better than you. So have a legitimate backup plan where your baseball career is over. I'll go be a plumber. I'll go be in sales. I'm going to go finish my degree and be an engineer. So yeah, I think that's really good for the kids for sure.
And I also think I want to build off that too for those of
Sure.
them who are listening, because we do have a lot of younger listeners that are, in junior high, that are in high school, in college, whatever it is. You can do both. You can
Okay.
pursue
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
big leagues
Sure.
while
Right.
creating a secondary life for yourself. You can run a business while you're playing professional baseball. I've seen it
Right.
done so many times.
Mm-hmm.
Like people are creating a life outside of baseball while pursuing their dreams. And I don't think that it's one way or the other. I think
Yeah.
it's a merge of both if you can handle it. That's the part is if you can handle it.
That is so true, Troy. When I was in AAA, our hitting coach had mentioned to me, "Hey, why don't you take a class during the season?" I am not doing a class during the season. No way. But you know what? I should have done a class during the season. That's what I should have done. I have plenty of time. I'm single to do one class at Marshall. But you're exactly right. You can do a hybrid. You can do a mix of both. That's exactly right. Yeah.
I have an interesting question for both you guys, and I suspect the answer to this is no. But are there anything, is there anything that teams do for guys to set them up when they're done playing? Like, do they have financial services classes? Or I know that if you're a non-senior sign, from what I understand, they pay for your schooling whenever you want to go back. But is there anything beyond that? Because I guess that would to me would be something that if you're an organization and you're like, how can we separate ourselves? That to me would be a separator in that we're going to set you up for your life when you're done playing, because we're going to teach you how to take care of your family, all the things you mentioned, Corey. Like, does that exist in baseball at all by any chance?
Yeah. So for me, Troy actually probably knows more than I know about this question. But when I was done with baseball with the Dirty Birds, I actually did go back to college at Marshall. I had 2 semesters left, and I mean, I was really taken care of by the Marlins. I had a nice townhouse that they paid for.
Hmm.
My school wasn't that much. So I had that set up for me. I don't know what all they have right now when it comes to educating. Another good thing to think about was what about those who are like from the Dominican
Right.
Republic who are in the United States? What's whenever they're done, what are they doing? So yeah, I don't know. That's the extent of my knowledge. I think Troy he may have more to kind of piggyback on that.
So I'll put this as lightly as I can,
Sure.
because I do know that we have other people listening that um, might be higher ups in certain places. But to answer your question, no, they don't have financial services. For me, in a majority of contracts, actually every contract that's not a senior sign contract, how college and that housing is included. So if you don't have that in your contract, you're probably a senior sign, and
Mm-hmm.
most likely in the Dominican Republic and international players, that is not a thing. I don't believe they pay for school. I don't believe anything like that. But as we know in baseball, there's the old saying, "What are you doing for me now?" or "What have you done for me lately?"
Mm-hmm.
So realistically, you're going to see guys that only get 1 or 2 years in professional baseball. Corey and I have had the opportunity to have long careers, but I've seen so many people that have had 2 years, 3 years, 1 year. They've had five at bats and now they're free agent. Now they don't play the game anymore. There is not a way that you can set them up because as much as you want to create a culture in a like in an organization, there's trades, there's releases, there is free agent signings, there's pushing up, pushing down, guys retiring. It's very hard to get a collective group like in college where you pretty much have guys that are going to be there for, minimum 3 years.
Mhm.
With the trade portal now, maybe minimum 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
But in professional baseball, that's I think the hardest thing for college guys to come into professional baseball knowing is that it is truly a free for all. You are
Yes.
in charge of your own career. It is your career. You need to stand up for what you think is right. You need to go outside of what the organization can provide. That's why we have agents. I have
Right.
agents that, handle my taxes, handle my investments, handle different things like that. I have, a good support system with my family that we are able to talk through certain things to make sure that we are set up in the right way. There's offshore, like even me playing in the Dominican, that was a way for me to supplement my income. There's certain ways to go about it that I don't think the organizations have quite tapped into because they don't need to. And I believe that's just because there's so much turnover in players. Like you could be a Red Sox for 6 months, and then you could be a Marlin, and then you could be a White Sox all in 1 year.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to be an internal organization and help players in that sense because there's so much movement in people's careers.
Yeah, good point.
Very well said. Yeah.
Corey, just want to thank you for coming on. This was awesome. It's a really interesting glimpse. I know that you're figuring out the next step, and we wish you nothing but the best. I know you're going to figure it out, and I know sales wasn't for you, but hopefully that next thing is going to be your choice because I think you bring something to people. You make people happy to be around you. You make people smile. You're a terrific, genuine person. There is something out there, and you will find that. And so I'm excited to see what that is. I'm happy we're back in touch, and I'm really grateful you gave us some time. So thank you really a ton for your time today.
Scott and Troy, thank you. It was an honor to be on the podcast and just good seeing you guys.
Thank you so much, Corey. We appreciate you. To all
Likewise.
of those that are listening, thank you so much for listening. You can find us wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube. Make sure to like and subscribe all of these videos. Make sure you find and give yourself a little reminder for every 2 weeks when the new episodes come out. We can't thank you guys enough for all your support and listening. And again, thank you, Mr. Bird. You have been phenomenal, and we love hearing your story.
Thank you guys.